Hello and welcome back to the final portion of the screencast for the textbook reading of Early Civilizations in China. Please remember that your task here is to answer the key concept questions as they coincide with the reading. Let's continue on with the last section. The Zhou Dynasty. In 1027 BC, the battle-hardened Zhou people marched out of their kingdom on the western frontier to overthrow the Shang. They set up the Zhou Dynasty, which lasted until 256 BC. The Mandate of Heaven. To justify their rebellion against the Shang, the Zhou promoted the idea of the mandate of heaven, or the divine right to rule. The cruelty of the last Shang king, they declared, had so outraged the gods that they had sent ruin on him, and the gods then passed the mandate of heaven to the Zhou, who treated the multitudes of the people well. The Chinese later expanded the idea of the mandate of heaven to explain the dynastic cycle, or the rise and fall of dynasties. As long as the dynasty provided good government and enjoyed the mandate of heaven, if the rulers became weak or corrupt, the Chinese believed that heaven would then withdraw its support. So floods, famine, or other catastrophes were signs that a dynasty had lost the favor of heaven. In the resulting chaos, an ambitious leader might seize power and set up a new dynasty. His success and strong government showed people that the new dynasty had won the mandate of heaven. The dynastic cycle would then begin again. A feudal state. The Zhou rewarded their supporters by granting them control over different regions. Thus, under the Zhou, China developed into a feudal state. Feudalism was a system of government in which local lords governed their own lands but owed military service and other forms to support the ruler. In later centuries, feudal societies also developed in Europe and in Japan. In theory, Zhou kings ruled China, and for about 250 years, they actually did enjoy great power and prestige. After about 771 BC, though, feudal lords exercised a real power and profited from the lands worked by peasants within their domains. Economic growth. During the Zhou period, China's economy grew, and knowledge of ironworking reached China at around 500 BC. As iron axes and ox-drawn iron plows replaced stone, wood, and bronze tools, farmers produced more food, and peasants also began to grow new crops such as soybeans, and some feudal lords organized into large-scale irrigation works, making farming even more productive. Commerce expanded too. The Chinese began to use money for the first time, and Chinese copper coins had holes in the center so that they could be strung to cords, and this early form of cash or money economy made trade easier. Merchants also benefited from new roads and canals constructed by feudal lords. Economic expansion led to an increase in population, and people from the Huanghe heartland overflowed into central China and began to farm in the immense Yangtze basin. So feudal nobles expanded their territories and encouraged peasants to settle in the conquered territories as well. And toward the end of the Zhou era, China was increasing in area and population as well as in prosperity. Here are the last two sections. Chinese achievements. The Chinese made progress in many great areas during the Shang and the Zhou periods. For example, astronomers studied the movement of the planets and recorded eclipses of the sun. Their findings helped them develop an accurate calendar with 365 and 1/4 days. And the Chinese also made remarkable achievements in art and technology of bronze making. Silk making. By 1000 BC, the Chinese had discovered how to make silk thread from cocoons of silkworms. Soon the Chinese were cultivating both silkworms and mulberry trees on which they had fed, and women did the laborious work of tending to the silkworms and processing the cocoons into thread. They then wove silk threads into smooth cloth that was colored with brilliant dyes, and only royalty and nobles could afford the robes made from the luxurious silk. So silk became China's most valuable export. The trade route that eventually linked China and the Middle East became known as the Silk Road. And to protect their control of this profitable trade, the Chinese kept the process of silk making a secret. The first books. Under the Zhou, the Chinese made the first books, and they bound thin strips of wood of bamboo together and then carefully drew characters on the flat surface with a brush and ink. Among the greatest Zhou works in this lovely book of songs, and many of its poems describe such events in the lives of farming people as planting and harvesting. Others praise kings or describe court ceremonies, and the book also includes tender or sad love songs. Looking ahead, by 256 BC, China was so large and wealthy and highly developed center of civilization that it was unrecognizable, and Chinese culture was already dominant in East Asia. Yet the Zhou dynasty was too weak to control feudal lords who ignored the emperor and battled one another in savage wars. Out of these wars rose a ruthless leader who was determined to impose political unity. His triumphs would leave a lasting imprint on Chinese civilization. And that concludes our textbook reading for today for this particular lesson. Once again, please feel free to replay any part of this presentation for detail and clarity, and good luck with completing the rest of the lesson. Thank you very much for tuning in.